Clairvoyance of Gurudev, Chapter 79. In 1963, Pujya Shri was travelling along with Mathura Das Bhai from Pushkar towards Saurashtra. They were travelling at a high speed, and as usual, Gurudev was in the front along with the driver. Suddenly, he turned around and told Mathura Das Bhai, "Listen, even if a bomb explodes at your feet, do not panic. Nothing will happen to you." Mathura Das Bhai acknowledged the instruction by offering pranam with folded hands. On 5th September 1965, war broke out with Pakistan and enemy planes bombed Jamnagar. The whole city was in panic, and well-to-do people shifted along with their families to the interior towns like Rajkot, Bhavnagar, Surendranagar, etc. The taxi fare to Rajkot, which was formerly only 50 rupees, now shot up to 500 rupees. And yet, even at this rate, taxis were in short supply. People started migrating by camel carts, hand carts, and nearly half the city was empty. Mathura Das Bhai clearly remembered Gurudev's instructions and asked Valima and Bharat as to what should be done. He quoted Gurudev's exact words and said, "Bapu had told me 2 years ago that even if a bomb explodes at your feet, don't panic." Bharat asked with faith, "If Bapu spoke with such clear assurance, then why should we panic?" Yet Mathur Bhai was shaken by doubts and could not remain quiet. At that time, Pujya Shri was in Jalaram Bapa's ashram at Virpur, and he told Jai Sukhram Bapa, "Phone Mathur Das at Jamnagar and tell him to remember what I said 2 years ago and not to panic." But before such a message could reach him, Mathura Das Bhai had already come to Virpur to be near Gurudev. On meeting him, Gurudev asked, "So despite my assurance, you cannot maintain your mental peace?" Mathura Das Bhai started mumbling in confusion. Gurudev stopped him and said, "Since you have come, stay for another 10 days, because a doubting person always perishes." Then turning to Bharat, he asked, "Is your college open or is it closed?" Bharat replied, "Bapu, the college is still open." To this Bapu replied, "In that case, you better return, and you can come here to visit your parents." At last it was the faith of Bharat that prevailed. Pujya Shri did not know the meaning of the word danger or fear. After Bharat's departure, he told Girdhar Bapa, "Though my health is indifferent, in this time Kashmir all by himself." On the 13th, Jamnagar was bombed again, but fortunately, as instructed by Gurudev, Bharat had come to Virpur. After a stay of 10 days and with renewed faith in Gurudev's words, Mathura Das Bhai returned to Jamnagar. Later, Jamnagar was bombed again on the 19th, but on the same day the war came to an end. On the 27th of May 1964, the whole nation was shocked when Jawaharlal Nehru left the mortal world. At that time, Pujya Shri was in Pushkar and he knew of the event much in advance. When the sad news was actually conveyed to him, he asked for his diary, wherein he had written in his own handwriting, "On the 27th, Jawahar... Since people had faith that Gurudev could read the future, they asked, "Bapu, who will be the next Prime Minister?" He replied, "You will know soon, but remember, color will prevail." After 2 days, the name of the next Prime Minister was announced, Lal Bahadur Shastri. Pujya Shri observed with a smile, "See, as I said, the red color has come." Who could decipher his profound words? Next day, on the 28th of May, Gurudev left for Pushkar for Indore in the Hari Jeep. After a full day's journey, we were still travelling at night, searching for a bungalow for our overnight halt. At 8 p.m., the lights of Shivpuri were visible from a distance. Suddenly, we saw a truck coming towards us at full speed. The culvert ahead was narrow, and the truck driver having lost control, the truck collided with our jeep with a big bang, and the vehicle went over the side of the road and came to a halt with a severe jolt. Gurudev, who was sitting along with Suresh in front, had his head dashed with windshield glass and started bleeding. All of us got down from the car, and in the light of the torch, we saw that Gurudev was hurt all over and bleeding from the nose. He had injuries on his hands and his feet, and all of his clothes were soaked with blood. In that dense forest, all of us were out of our minds with anxiety and fear. Gurudev said, "First, take care of Nannu Maharaj and Suresh." While Suresh was badly hurt on the chest by the steering, Nannu Maharaj had a deep gash on his back. They said, "First, save the savior of lakhs." Carried Gurudev to the side of the road on his back, and a passing bus, seeing the accident, gave us a lift and drove straight to the Shivpuri hospital compound. Gurudev was admitted to a separate room, and after stopping the bleeding, the Gurudev wanted to give an injection to make him sleep. Gurudev said, "There is no need for an injection. If you want me to sleep, I will sleep." And he gently closed his eyes and fell asleep. The doctor could not believe that anyone with such injuries could sleep without an injection. Yet, on hearing Gurudev's gentle snoring, he left in wonder. Jamna Das Bhai and Bhogi Bhai came from Indore and Guna, where the news was conveyed. While Gurudev was being shifted to Indore in the ambulance, he asked for his diary, in which he had written in advance, "The 28th of May is a bad day for me." On the 10th of January 1966, Gurudev was in the Indore Dharamshala. He said with a sad face, "Just see what the radio says." At that time, Lal Bahadur Ji had gone there for post-war peace pact with Pakistan. Anil Bhai asked, "Should I go home and listen to the radio?" Gurudev replied, "This is not necessary. Tomorrow all will know when the people start screaming." No one had understood, but next day the sad news was broadcasted from the radio that Shri Lal Bahadur Shastri had expired on account of a heart attack at 1:30 a.m. in the night at Tashkent. Now all of us understood the significance of Gurudev's sadness yesterday evening. That was the last day in Shastriji's life. When the news was conveyed to him, Gurudev said, "Indeed, it is sad that Shastriji has left us, but that was destiny. He was Lal, son of Bharat Bahadur, brave, as well as a Shastri, a learned man indeed." Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 80. The Result of My Disobedience. While Pujya Shri was in Indore, since my brother Anil's wedding was drawing nearer, we left Indore by car for Bombay. Gurudev advised, "There is a chance of an accident today, so do not drive after 7 p.m. in the evening." On reaching Sendwa, we stopped for tea. The watch showed 10 minutes to 7 p.m. Though I remembered Gurudev's warning, fate misguided me and clouded my judgment. After a while, in the dim light, while we were mounting the Khalghati, the driver lost control over the steering and the car went out of control and took 4 to 5 circles, and we felt the entire world spinning around us. With a trembling heart, a scream escaped my lips. "Baba, control the car! Hey Ram! Hey Gurudev!" Right then, the car hit a nearby rock with terrifying force and came to a jerky halt. The car was a total loss. On the other side was a deep valley. What if the car had gone there and down the valley? When I glanced at the watch, it was 7:10 p.m. I was extremely sorry for having ignored Gurudev's warning. With great effort, I alighted from the car and with the driver's help carried Anil and made him lie down on the roadside. I was alone in a strange place and was extremely agitated. But by the grace of Gurudev, a truck stopped at our request, and the driver loaded our luggage and drove towards Sendwa. On the way, he procured a large glass of milk for Anil and made him drink it. We drove straight to the hospital, and the cleaner called the doctor, and after unloading our luggage, when he was about to drive away, the driver offered me namaskar with folded hands. I opened my purse and tried to give him a fistful of currency notes. He replied, "Benji, I have merely performed my duty, nothing more." and drove away without taking note of the amount that I had intended to give him. At 11 p.m. in the night, I phoned Balubhai in Indore and, narrating the whole incident, told him to inform Gurudev the next morning. But Balubhai's wife, Kamlaben, went to the Dharamshala immediately, and Pujya Shri was still awake. On hearing the news, he took Omkar Bhai along with him and started for Sendwa. Though I had disobeyed his instructions, Gurudev made his title Din Dayal, comforter of the afflicted and needy, come true. At 3 p.m., there was a knock on the door, and Omkar Bhai spoke. Damuben, open the door. Maharaj Shri has come. Gurudev entered, and without a word of rebuke, he went straight to Anil, who was almost unconscious, and fondled his head with a loving hand. I cannot express my mental state of that time through the inadequate medium of mere words. Jai Bhagwan.
Chapter 81 Geeta Devi's Mental Reveries. In 1966, at the loving persuasion of Girdhar Bapa, Gurudev stayed at Virpur for rest and solitude. The farmhouse where he stayed was about 3 miles away from town. Every morning, Girdhar Bapa would go there along with his family for darshan, and after ceremonial puja, he would make offerings to Gurudev. During this period, it was decided that Gurudev would visit Porbandar, and what happened there is narrated here in Geeta Ben's own words. On the sacred soil of Porbandar and in the presence of Gurudev, the foundation ceremony of the Andh Gurukul was to be performed. The eager population was all eyes for Gurudev's arrival, and several famous personalities came to Virpur to escort Gurudev to Porbandar. While preparations were being made for the Porbandar visit, I thought, how nice would it be if Gurudev ordered me to come along? But how to ask him in this crowd? While I was thus lost in thought, Gurudev called me and said, "You better take your seat in the car." At Porbandar, Pujya Shri was to be the guest of Vallabhbhai, of Miss Bhanji Lavji Ghiwala. He rested for the night. Next morning at 8 a.m., he went to the foundation ceremony. There were the Maharana of Porbandar, Shri Nanjibhai Mehta, and other dignitaries, and they were seated appropriately. The ceremony concluded on a joyous note, and Nanjibhai requested Gurudev to address the gathering. Pujya Shri gave a short speech on duties towards humanity and service to it. After the function, Gurudev went to Vallabhbhai's house. At noon, the trustees of Geeta Mandir, Porbandar, came to invite Gurudev and requested him to pay a visit to their institution. Despite indifferent health, he agreed to go there at 5 p.m. After the trustees had gone, glancing in my direction, he said, "Today Geeta will give her discourse in Geeta Mandir." I spoke with courage but with due humility. "Bhagwan, I won't give discourse." He laughed and said, "Look at her. Geeta is refusing to give discourse in Geeta Mandir." Then added smilingly, "I won't listen to your excuses. You will have to deliver the discourse." I wondered, was this an order or an act of grace? As the evening approached, my agitation increased. Perhaps he was merely joking when he spoke about my discourse, and by now he must have forgotten. As if in response to my thoughts, while we were leaving for Geeta Mandir in the evening, he reminded me, "Listen, you will have to give the discourse. Don't refuse in public." I felt contrite at my silly thoughts that he might have forgotten. Now I truly started searching for the topic for my discourse. Even the most accomplished speakers would stumble in their speech in the presence of Gurudev. Then, let alone my humble self. Finally, I decided to speak on divine attributes. After having darshan, I entered the hall. Gurudev beckoned me to come nearer. My mind was permeated with this topic of my speech, and the hall was packed to capacity, and there was pin drop silence. At the request of the trustees, Gurudev delivered his pravachan. Nowadays, we do a lot for the blind, such as welfare centers, etc. This morning, we had the foundation ceremony of Gurukul for the blind. Eye camps are organized by devotees for the benefit of the blind. All these are good deeds, but we must do something for those who are blind in spite of having both eyes. This is mental blindness due to anger, greed, and desires. We must do something to remove such blindness. Doctors can remove the cataract and cure a person of physical blindness, but God alone can save us from a person blinded by anger, greed, or desires. To remove such blindness from our society, the Lord has shown the characteristics of divine attributes in the 16th chapter of the Gita. And now Gita will explain those attributes to you. I was completely immersed in listening to Gurudev, how lucidly he had explained the mental blindness. But I was pleasantly surprised at the thought that Gurudev could read my mind and know about the topic on which I had decided to speak. Honoring his instruction, I began my pravachan and continued with clarity, as though I was a mere radio cabinet through the medium of which Gurudev's views were being transmitted to the assembled audience. Truly, God's name Antaryami, knower of our thoughts, is not in vain. Jai Bhagwan. Sarve Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukham Apnuyat.